subscribe.
The Voices of Victory podcast show.
Voices of Victory.
Vision,
Voices of Victory.
leadership,
Voices of Victory.
workplace-related topics.
The Voices of Victory.
Voices of Victory. Voices of Victory. Voices of Victory.
It's time for the show. You are now listening to the Voices of Victory podcast show.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mario Di Leone.
Hello and welcome to the Voices of Victory podcast show. 1, 2, 3 snaps and a clap. And welcome. I am your host, Mario Di Leone, Voices of Victory. And today's episode is aimed directly at couples. What it takes to actually build a real relationship. This is all about emotional nourishment and conscious commitment. So this is going to be aimed and targeted at folks in the yoga circles. Very valuable. Let's go ahead and have some fun because it's all about conscious awareness. That's why it relates to the yoga crowd. Now, welcome back to the show. If you haven't been here before, welcome. We're aiming this directly at couples. So whether you're in a relationship now or you're attempting to deepen one, or you want to set yourself up for the future, or you just want to have a healthy direction, with an emotionally rich partnership in the future, then this one show is for you. Especially if you're someone who's walked a path of self-awareness, someone who's rooted in personal development, someone who's rooted in healing, maybe even yoga or conscious living, then today's conversation will give you the kind of clarity, the strategy, and the emotional nourishment that your relationship has actually been craving. So let's get real. Let's get real about relationships. Let's begin with this. There's a myth that says you have to love yourself before you can love anyone else. And while that may seem very true on the surface, there's a lot of things underneath that to unpack that. It might seem true on the surface, but there's all of these things underneath that we have to unpack and pick apart. I'm here to tell you that's not entirely accurate, that statement. You can be in a relationship even if you don't love yourself. I mean, that's the negative side of it, is you could literally be in a relationship and not love who you are. So that's why it's entirely not true. Plenty of people are. Plenty of people are surviving, just trying to get by. Some people are learning. Some people are healing in the process. But what is important about it is this, is that you've got to at least do these three things. You've got to at least like yourself. You've got to at least have a level of self-acceptance. You've got to be able to say, I can trust myself, I know my value, I decide my value, and I'm willing to actually grow alongside with this person. Because without that, you'll constantly project all of your unhealed parts of yourself onto the other person like they're a movie screen. And you're bringing a lot of that to them. And that can be very overwhelming for the other party. Because without those three things, you'll constantly project, you'll confuse conflict for chaos, not realizing that you can work through conflict. Conflict can be healthy when two people come to an understanding, that the conflict is not used as a weapon of destruction, but it's used as a means to understand and cross the bridge and bridge that gap between you and the other person. Now, why am I a person even qualified to say so? Because I am a certified court mediator in the state of Massachusetts. And a lot of times you deal with conflict. You deal with two people or two parties. Now, you have to watch out as well, because without those three things, you can mistaken silence, things being quiet, as peace, when it might actually be an emotional shutdown. The silent treatment and shutdown is not too far away. They go hand in hand with each other. They literally do. And I want to bring to the table that your partner is straight up a mirror, but you have to look. You have to be able to look. It's one of the greatest gifts of being in a relationship is the self versus the other. And that other person becomes that mirror. They're a mirror, not as a critic, not as a judge, but as a reflection for your soul to grow. They reflect the parts of you that you've actually ignored, or maybe the parts of you that you've avoided, or maybe you never had the space to explore those areas before. And that is why a committed relationship is one of the greatest vehicles for your personal growth if you're willing to actually listen. If you're willing to see, if you're willing to open up that self-awareness and actually see what's being reflected back to you, not as an attack, but as an invitation to be part of their life. And journey alongside with them. And that doesn't mean the relationship should feel like therapy, okay? You're not supposed to be your partner's coach, and please, by all means, avoid trying to fix your partner. Avoid that at all costs. We all fall into that. It's not helpful. If you both show up and you're both willing to grow, you can actually transform together and have a journey side by side. So bringing it up, there's 5 things to improve your actual committed relationship, and I want to go over them. So let's shift into what you came here for, which is some grounded things that are going to help you improve your committed relationship. Whether you're just starting out, whether the both of you have just in the beginning, or you've been through some seasons together. If you had a little seasoning, that could be a great thing. So these are some non-negotiables that are going to emotionally nourish a long-term connection. So the first point I want to bring out is emotional nourishment should never be optional. If you want to water a plant, you water the plant so it doesn't die. You feed your body so it stays alive, but somehow we forget the same rule applies to love. Is that emotional nourishment means checking in with them, not just how was your day, but how are you really doing? How are we doing? How are we doing in this partnership? Where are you in the grand scheme of this? Where are you? How do you feel about us, right? It's the words, it's the tone, it's the space that you create or co-create together. And you know what? You may have to sit in some uncomfortable emotions, hold space as they call it. You may have to sit in that for a moment and just listen. And if it's been a while since your partner has felt safe with you in your arms, then you know what? That's where the work actually begins. That's where it all begins. And that brings us over to time. So we have emotional nourishment, but we also have time. Time is not just being in the same room, because there's couples that go in the same room and they're both on their phones. That's not time. That's passing time, right? That's being unaware. And quality time isn't just sharing the space, it's sharing attention with each other. The presence, the laughter, the tenderness. Put the phones down, look them in the eye, because that trust builds intimacy. There's people that have done eye gazing, and you know what? Let me tell you, it's strong. It's very romantic. Very romantic. Very powerful too. Holding a gaze with your partner for a few minutes. And you start to laugh, you start to chuckle, you start to feel weird, you start to laugh. You might even break the contact for a few seconds and start laughing hysterically. It happens, but it's pretty wild. It can create intimacy. And at the end of the night, before bed, before the time where you both turn in to go to sleep, it's nice to just check in with each other and say, what was the one thing that I was able to do for you today that made a difference in how you feel? Asking each other some intimate questions that are not going to be met with defensiveness and closure, people closing off, but being met with openness. So looking them in the eyes, or having a nightly ritual before bed, a weekly walk, a 10-minute daily recap before bed, no phones during dinner. Yeah, I know families that do it. They literally have a giant Easter basket, and everybody puts their phone in the basket, and it goes in another room. And there are people that will have anxiety with that. But quite honestly, there are healthy bits of anxiety, and some anxiety was actually meant to be worked through. That's the reality. Now, this isn't about anxiety on this show, although we do talk about it. But having that no phone dinner, yes, it makes a difference, because consistency builds that trust, and that trust builds more intimacy. Now, effort is another part of it. Effort is literally the language of commitment. So you don't coast into a good relationship. You don't relax into emotional safety. We get complacent. We get very complacent. We fall into our daily routines. But what's important is effort is important. It's crucial. You create the relationship. You build the relationship, and you have to keep tending to it. So effort isn't always romantic. Sometimes it looks like doing the dishes. Sometimes it's being the one who apologizes first. Sometimes it's learning to figure out how they need to be held, loved, even when it's different from you. Effort is action rooted in care. And love without effort, well, that's a theory. That's not necessarily reality, and that's not necessarily a relationship. So when it comes to communication, it is more than words. It is literally tone, it's timing, it's your intent, it's your body language. It's not just communicating information, you're communicating your presence as well. So when you listen, and you listen to understand, not to just reply. When you speak from a place of vulnerability, not just volume. And if you're confused about what vulnerability is, I suggest you listen to my episode on militaristic vulnerability versus emotional vulnerability, because they are different. The way you communicate is going to make a big difference. You're not just communicating information, you're communicating your presence. When you listen to understand, not just replying all the time, speaking over the person. When you speak from vulnerability, not just the volume, not just being loud. So the way you communicate sets a tone of the emotional climate in the relationship. So you got to make it breathable, make it safe to tell the truth, right? Make it safe to tell the truth. The way you communicate is going to really make it safe and breathable. The relationship can be built very strong and foundational. In my training, I have a relationship theory, and I work with couples that actually need help. And I have a relationship theory that relates to psychology of how to create a very powerful and strong foundational relationship. Now, this is for couples that are already established. If they're a person that's dating, they may get some healthy information out of it, but it will be minimal because it's really for couples that are in the actual relationship. The relationship isn't you. It's not them. It's a we. You are contributing to each other. You're both working together. It's a committed relationship, not just a familiar, fun one. It's the shared goals, the ritual, the meanings, not just mood. So you have to honor the identity of your relationship with your partner. It's a we. So the committed relationship doesn't mean that perfect people come together. It means two people are willing to meet each other in life. It's for people who know how to say, I see you, I hear you, and I'm not afraid, and I'm still here. So whenever you're on a journey in a relationship, whether it's relationship blooming, rebuilding, or just beginning, just know this, that you don't have to be perfect in love, but you do need to show up. You have to show up fully, gently, and often. And this is Mario Di Leone of Voices of Victory. Until next time, keep building, keep nourishing, and above all, keep showing up with your heart. Have a great day. I'll see you on the next episode.